is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Ticket with Tippett. My name is Gavin Tippett, and these are my start and sits by position for week 1 of your fantasy football season. Let's jump in. Basically, how this is going to work, I'm going to have 2 quarterbacks. We're going to compare them and we're going to label them start versus sit. And our first quarterback pairing is Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Fields. Trevor Lawrence is starting at Carolina and Justin Fields is at home versus Pittsburgh. Obviously, 2 very different matchups. Lawrence against the easy Carolina defense and Fields against the tough Pittsburgh defense that he's so familiar with from last season. Pittsburgh gave up the 5th fewest points per game to quarterbacks last year in fantasy, and they added Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay. And with an already good run defense, there's no way that Justin Fields produces. He's going to be my sit quarterback. And I'm starting Trevor Lawrence for the sheer fact, whether he was playing Carolina or not, Liam Cohen is coming in and he will revitalize Trevor Lawrence's career. Similar to the way he did Baker Mayfield, he's going to give a new offensive scheme that Trevor Lawrence can build and grow into. Carolina gave up the 4th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks last season, and it's a defense that Liam Cohen knows well, being that he was the offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay for 2 seasons. Our next quarterback start and sit is Jordan Love versus CJ Stroud. Jordan Love at home versus Detroit, and CJ Stroud on the road in Los Angeles playing against the Rams. We're starting Jordan Love because the addition of Matthew Golden gives them a target that they haven't had in a long time in Green Bay, probably since Devontae Adams left. Detroit gave up the 10th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks last season, and Jordan Love has been a known killer of Detroit. We're going to sit CJ Stroud for multiple reasons. 1, their offensive line is horrible. And 2, the Rams' defensive line is pretty stout. This will likely be a defensive-minded game with both defenses playing really well and the offenses finding their parts when they can. And our last start and sit matchup of week 1 for our quarterbacks is Drake May versus Jared Goff. Drake May is at home versus Las Vegas, and Jared Goff is at Green Bay. Lambeau Field seems to be the place where Jared Goff struggles most, as he averages just around 12 fantasy points per game at Green Bay, which is far below his average for any other field. And since Jared Goff has been with the Lions, he has averaged below 15 fantasy points per game against Green Bay, which is why we're going to sit Jared Goff and start Drake May. We're starting Drake May because of a revamped offensive unit, the additions of Stephon Diggs, Kyle Williams, Travion Henderson, and a revamped offensive line with Will Campbell. This gives Drake May and the New England Patriots offense a chance to go out there and ball against the Las Vegas Raiders pass defense, who gave up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks last season. Now let's move over to the running backs, where we have some pretty cool options and flex plays for you. Starting with Isaiah Pacheco versus Breece Hall. 2 running backs that really came on strong 2 to 3 years ago. Both got hurt, and then now there's question marks behind whether they're the bell cow still in their offense. Both have pretty tough matchups. Isaiah Pacheco going up against the Los Angeles Chargers Friday night in Brazil, and Breece Hall playing against Pittsburgh. Everybody knows they're a top 5 defense, no question. But we are going to sit Breece Hall. Between the split between him and Braylon Allen, we have question marks about that. And let alone Pittsburgh's defense is just top 5 in the NFL. They're probably going to stop Justin Fields, so the only thing they'll have to rely on is the rush game. But that will lead to minimal scoring opportunities being so one-dimensional. So therefore, we're going to start Isaiah Pacheco. Kansas City's defense is so strong that the Chargers are going to have a tough time scoring on offense, leading to more touches for Isaiah Pacheco compared to Breece Hall. The next running back options are DeAndre Swift versus Aaron Jones. Both playing against each other on Monday Night Football. I'm starting DeAndre Swift. He's the only healthy running back in Chicago right now, so much so that DJ Moore has been taking reps at running back. And Minnesota isn't very good against the rush. This just leads to a lot of DeAndre Swift playing time and touches overall in the game. Versus Aaron Jones' situation where the Bears are also okay on defense against the rush. Not great, not bad. But you have Jordan Mason in the backfield along with Aaron Jones taking a lot of the goal line work, more than likely being that Jordan Mason is a bigger body back. And our last running back start and sit is Austin Eckler versus Tyrone Tracy. Both playing against each other on Sunday in a 1 o'clock game. We have no idea what Austin Eckler's workload is going to be. We have no idea what Chris Rodriguez's workload is going to be. We have no idea what Jeremy McNichols, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. We have no idea what this Washington backfield is going to look like. And I'm a Washington Commanders fan, and I have no clue. I could not tell you what is going to happen in that backfield. We can only tell from week 1, which is why we're sitting Austin Eckler. And that means that we're going to start Tyrone Tracy. He is the clear running back 1 in New York, with Cam Scatterbo facing injury and Devin Singletary obviously not being the option and Tyrone Tracy taking that job from him last season. Plus, Washington's run defense probably got a little bit worse. Jonathan Allen moving on. Bobby Wagner's a year older. We don't know what that run defense is actually going to look like. They signed Javon Kinlaw. They made some additions. We'll see what happens. but Tyrone Tracy is just the better play over Austin Eckler. And now moving on to wide receiver, our first matchup is Stephon Diggs versus Courtland Sutton. And we have Stephon Diggs at home against Las Vegas, and we have Courtland Sutton at home against Tennessee. And if you could tell by my start prediction for Drake May, then you're going to be able to tell what my prediction is for Stephon Diggs. We're starting Stephon Diggs against the Las Vegas Raiders. As I said before, the new additions to the New England offense gives them an offense that is viable and lethal. And this Las Vegas pass defense is horrible. It is bad. Expect for Stephon Diggs to see a ton of targets in this game. And we're sitting Courtland Sutton. Tennessee was the number 2 pass defense, and if their offense is any kind of better this season, where they're not going to be on the field all the time, their defense could be even better than it was last year, which could lead to shutting down both Courtland Sutton and Marvin Mims. Which leads me into my next two. Are we starting Marvin Mims or Darnell Mooney? This is from my deeper leagues. So if you're in like a 14, 16-man league, this is probably your question. Do you start Marvin Mims? Do you start Darnell Mooney? You have no idea. Well, I'm here to tell you. Darnell Mooney is playing against Tampa Bay in a dome, and Marvin Mims is playing against Tennessee, just like Courtland Sutton, who is the number 2 pass defense. And as I said, if the offense gets any kind of better in Tennessee, then they're going to control the ball a little bit longer. The opposing offense won't have as much time on the field as they did before, leading to less touches, less targets, less overall time of possession for Denver to score against Tennessee. And we're going to start Darnell Mooney against Tampa Bay. As I said, they're in a dome. Tampa Bay give up the 5th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. And if Michael Penix looks anything like he did at the end of the season last year, which was a competent quarterback who can grow into his abilities in the NFL, then I don't see why Darnell Mooney isn't a start in a deeper league. The over-under for this game is at 47.5, one of the highest of the week. So expect a shootout-style game and for a lot of passes to be thrown. And our last wide receiver matchup is Josh Downs versus Chris Olave. Josh Downs is at home versus Miami in a dome, and Chris Olave is at home versus Arizona in a dome. We're going to sit Chris Olave. Olave's options at quarterback are just so bad that I don't know if he's a start for the whole season. It just depends on if Rattler or Shao decides to show up at all. I love Chris Olave's target share. He is going to get a ton of targets, but I just don't know if they're going to be anywhere relatively in the area. That's going to be the question for the whole year. Can they get the ball to Chris Olave? And with an improved Arizona defense, I don't think this is the game that you should start Chris Olave. But we are starting Josh Downs against Miami, and Miami was a top 3 defense versus wide receivers for fantasy points per game. But that Miami cornerback and safety room got a lot worse. They lost Javon Holland. So what used to be a great secondary has now become very bland and not very good. And more than likely, Indianapolis is going to be down against Miami. Miami overall is the better team. So you should see a lot of pass work and a lot of targets to Josh Downs for this week 1 matchup. And last but not least, we have our tight ends. This one's a pretty interesting one. We have Colson Loveland versus Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft was probably one of the most consistent options at tight end last year, pretty much scoring 10 points on the dot every single time he went out and played. But Luke Musgrave is back fully healthy, and Matthew Golden gives them a wide receiver option that they haven't had yet. And Detroit is a top 10 defense against tight ends in fantasy points. So I don't see where Tucker Kraft fits in. Obviously, Jaden Reed might be out. That gives him a little bit of a boost, but I don't think you're starting him against Colson Loveland, who's playing against Minnesota. Loveland will likely get design plays. Ben Johnson loved signing up plays for his rookie tight end, Sam Laporta in Detroit, and I don't see why things would be different with a similar play style from Colson Loveland, especially when Minnesota's so good against the wide receiver in fantasy. I don't see how you don't start Colson Loveland in this game. And the next tight end matchup is Kyle Pitts versus Chigo Konkwu. As I said, this game is going to be a shootout. The over-under 47.5. People are going to get touches. The offenses are going to get going. Kyle Pitts will find the ball no matter what in this game. Plus, Tampa Bay has given up the 5th most fantasy points per game in 2024 against tight ends. And Kyle Pitts has also scored 10-plus fantasy points in 4 out of the 6 games he's played against Tampa Bay in his career. Chigo Konkwu is at Denver, who is a top 15 defense against tight ends. And Chigo Konkwu hasn't proven anything in his NFL career to make him a viable fantasy option at tight end. Kyle Pitts is more consistent overall than Chigo Konkwu has ever been. And yes, he gets a quarterback upgrade from Will Levis to Cam Ward, but Kyle Pitts is in a much better situation, and that will lead to Kyle Pitts starting over Chigo Konkwu. And our final matchup for our tight ends is Hunter Henry versus Dalton Kincaid. Both pretty decent tight end options. One with a really tough matchup this week, one with a really easy one. I think this one's pretty fundamental. Hunter Henry we're starting, and we're sitting Dalton Kincaid. Baltimore was top 10 against tight ends last season in fantasy points per game. And more than likely, their defense is going to play well. So it'll probably be a run-heavy script where both teams run the ball a lot. I don't see where Dalton Kincaid fits into this type of game and this type of format versus Baltimore. Where Hunter Henry versus Las Vegas, again, New England's probably going to play well on offense. Hunter Henry's going to get some red zone opportunities. And Las Vegas is bottom 5 against tight ends in fantasy points per game last season because the Las Vegas Raiders defense is so bad. So there it is, everybody. Our start and sit for the week 1 of fantasy football. If you like that, subscribe, drop a like, share, and then comment who you would like to have me decide on start and sit for each position. If you have some questions on your team, you don't know who to play in your flex, you don't know who to play at wide receiver or running back or quarterback, tight end, whatever it is, drop it in the comments. I will be able to answer all your questions in the comments below. So other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by. Peace, dope, and love, and we'll see you later.